Our gospel reading this morning comes from the gospel according to Luke, the 7th chapter. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and took his place at the table. And a woman in the city, who was a sinner, having learned that he was eating in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster jar of ointment. She stood behind him at his feet, weeping, and began to bathe his feet with her tears and to dry them with her hair. Then she continued kissing his feet and anointing them with the ointment. Now, when the Pharisee who had invited him saw it, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what kind of woman this is who is touching him, that she is a sinner." Jesus spoke up and said to him, "Simon, I have something to say to you." "Teacher," he replied, "speak." And together, a certain creditor had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debts for both of them. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon answered, "I suppose the one for whom he canceled the greater debt." And Jesus said to him, "You have judged rightly." Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she bathed my feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but for the first time I came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. Did you not anoint my head with oil? But she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore, I tell you, her sins, which were many, have been forgiven. Hence, she has shown great love. But the one to whom little is forgiven loves little." Then he said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." But those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, "Who is this who even forgives sins?" And he said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning. Welcome back to St. Andrew as we continue our sermon series created to be. The title today is The Blessing of Imperfection. And welcome back to a time when we are once again seeing Jesus disrupting things. Jesus stepping into the lives of people here in this reading that we've read responsibly. And the way that we can see how Jesus is shaking things up and bringing purpose and meaning to a whole new group of people. At least we hope that this will happen. The context of our passage here today is Jesus not with his disciples. Jesus not in a kind of a familiar, maybe even a comfortable place, but Jesus is stretching out a little bit here, and the context is with the Pharisees, these people who are against Jesus, or people who oppose him in a number of very direct ways. Maybe not yet in the Gospel of Luke are they fully aware of all that Jesus was going to say or do, but they would oppose his interpretation of the law, like healing on the Sabbath. In this passage, they hear him say, "The sins are forgiven of this woman," and they say, "Who is he that can forgive sins?" But Jesus is in the company of the Pharisees in this passage. In addition, a woman comes in from outside, a woman who is of the city. We don't know fully what that means, if she's a prostitute, someone who is a sinner in any large measure of a way. And so Jesus is not with his disciples. He's not in kind of a normal setting. He's in a group of people here that's new, that's different, that's wider, and he's doing his thing again. So what does he do but tells a parable? He tells a story about a person who is two people that are in debt. One person that's in debt for 500 denarii. Now that's basically 1 day's wage is 1 denarii. So do the math. Or another one who's 50 denarii in debt. Again, do the math, but 10 times less. Which one is going to be more grateful than the other if the debtor forgives their sins? And of course, the Pharisees just fall right into this discussion here, and they say, well, of course, the one who has the most forgiven will be the most grateful. And indeed, that is the correct answer. And the woman, shows this great signs of gratitude for having been forgiven. They, maybe not so much. As I read this parable, maybe this is the first time you've heard this parable, I have to look at it from a number of different directions. And over the course of the week, it became apparent to me that this parable is all about not just the Pharisees, who were, I guess, the ones who were in, maybe they conceived of themselves as being of less debt. And then they thought of this woman of the city being in more debt, but being about a wider community of people. Try this on for size with me for a moment. The disciples are called to follow beside Jesus and make their way, but we know that the disciples didn't know where they were going. We know that the disciples said things like, we don't know where we're going, we don't know the way, and Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. We know that the disciples said, don't go to Jerusalem, Jesus, because you will get punished there, you'll be crucified there. And Jesus said, no, I need to go to Jerusalem. We know that when Jesus was betrayed, that one of the disciples said, I do not know who Jesus is, I don't know who this man, but you're a Galilean, aren't you? Aren't the disciples also those who were in debt to Jesus? As we think about the broader 30,000-foot perspective of Jesus' ministry, when he is with people in their circumstances, think about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for a moment, what you know about the story of Jesus. How many times is he with people who are in need, people who are in debt, who have imperfections, in other words, people who don't have it all right, that they don't have it all figured out? And this parable may very well be given to the Pharisees and the sinful woman of the city. But in the broader interpretation, I'd like to propose here this morning that the key to this parable is that everybody needs what Jesus has to offer. And Jesus in Luke 7 is just broadening this out even wider to the Pharisees, to this woman who didn't know him either, so that they all might know that he has forgiveness and grace to offer. Isn't that just the way of Jesus? To see people, not just those 4 fishermen by the boats and saying, hey, I think you guys have potential. You guys have a way to be part of the greater purpose of love, the way of love in the world. But isn't it great that Jesus would even see that in the Pharisees? See that on the woman who was so sinful? That Jesus could look upon a person and have the attitude about them that this person is created by my Father. This person has potential. And we know that there are people in the Bible, Paul, let alone who was first Saul and the persecutor of the church. Why in the world would God or Jesus look upon someone named Saul who could go on and be the great missionary, the great teacher and the spreader of Christianity? But Jesus has this way of seeing things in people or hoping things for people, or a persistent, stubborn desire for the Pharisees, for the women of the city, and everybody else to get what it is that he has to offer them: forgiveness, peace, love, and purpose. I love that Jesus just sees the best in people despite of themselves, doesn't he? I think as people have gotten used to seeing eventually beauty in things that don't always seem beautiful to begin with. I was thinking this week about a few of those things and have a few images to share. Like, who would think about seeing a pile of rocks in a particular place? But if you were to see these rocks, they don't look like anything special on the outside. But then you put a saw to them, a rock saw to them, and they become agates on the inside. And then you cut them in a different way and put a light behind them, and they become beautiful and spectacular. When I was in Belize on our mission trip through St. Andrew last August, there was this incredible tree at one of the Mayan ruins that cast an identical shadow on the ground beneath me. So symmetrical and so beautiful in its kind of round, spherical look. But I also enjoy just sort of the beauty of this oak tree and how it grows and stretches. It's not as symmetrical as the other tree was in Belize, but there's something beautiful and life-giving in that as well. We see random collections of shells on the seashore, and they're random and irregular in shape and size, but all together in a setting, they also are beautiful. Some gnarly driftwood on a seashore as well. I mean, there are people who put driftwood as decorations in their homes because it's beautiful. There's something lovely about it. Now, one item that I'm not so sure I know what to think about is the platypus. So I don't know. So if I'm supposed to see something beautiful or lovely, what I see is God having a bad day, actually, in creation. I see God trying to decide, is this a duck? Is this a beaver? I don't know. Maybe it's okay to let God wake up on the wrong side of the bed one of the days of creation. But we put distressed wood, in our homes. My sister-in-law has a desk that she has where she works at virtually, and it's totally distressed wood. It's lovely, but it's beat up, but it's lovely. And then also I thought of a wildflower garden. You've maybe seen these as well. Sometimes Michelle and I, when we plant our garden, it's 3 here and 5 here and 3 here and 1 there, the rule of odds and so forth. But with a wildflower garden, you just kind of sow, and it just kind of grows, yet it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. We see beauty in things that are imperfect, my friends. We see things that are imperfect as beautiful. So I want to talk about first allowing ourselves to be who we really are and live out our faith with purpose. We need to allow ourselves to see each other who we really are. How many of us can proclaim an absolute perfection in our life, in our work, in our relationships, in our marriage, relationships with our parents, relationship with our kids? How many of us in the day and wondered if we could have said something a little bit differently or done something a little bit more purposeful? We end the day or the week or the year and wondering, wow, that was a lot of water over the dam or under the bridge. For what? Jesus, I remind you, chooses in the Gospels to see beauty in everyone. It's a lovely thing to see beauty in us, even if we're Pharisees, even if we're women of the city, or even if we are this or that or the other thing. There is something about the capacity of Jesus to say, you're going to get what I have coming to you. That's my mission. My love, my grace, God's love and God's grace for you. And together, we'll live out our faith, your faith, with purpose. A couple of years ago, as many of you already know, I serve as a chaplain in the Eden Prairie Police and Fire Department, which means that I'm on call every couple of weeks, and I get a text message from the dispatch if something has happened, and I'm called out to respond. So I call in to dispatch and I ask, okay, this is Chaplain 13. What's the situation? And I get an address. Then I get on my radio and I say, Chaplain en route. And then when I pull up on the street next to the place, I say, Chaplain arrived. So that the police who are inside the home are able to come out and greet me at the end of the driveway to give me a quick briefing before I go in to this place that I'm going. I don't know the circumstance. In this case, it was a death inside of this home. And so I crossed the threshold been briefed briefly by the police who had responded to the call. And I walked into the living room, down a hallway into the living room, and the first words I heard, except for a good evening from the other officers, was the words, "Pastor Peter." So sitting on the other side of the room was Gwen. And this was her home that she shared with her son who had tragically died a few hours earlier, or at least that she had just discovered. Now, I've been at St. Andrew for 10 years now, and so I've had the privilege of getting to know members of St. Andrew and people at St. Andrew. Not everybody, but I'm still getting to know you. And I did not know Gwen. Gwen had joined the congregation during the pandemic and had been worshiping faithfully online during the pandemic, and she knew me by name. And so I went and sat with her, explained the circumstances that were going on about Greg, her son, who was downstairs in the basement, and why they were going to be asking her questions, and all those terrible things, terrible circumstances that one finds themselves in a circumstance like that. And I sat and we talked and we prayed. And I, over the course of time, do the best that I can, though I'm not perfect, of keeping in touch with Gwen on text, and I know she joins us online and here in person as well. But as the Southwest Grief Coalition started happening this fall, I am on the governing board that makes up this group of churches that provide a place for people who are grieving to discuss, to learn, and to get through their profound grief, not alone, but in the companionship of other people. And I got the list of people who are going to be the small group facilitators. And what did I see on the list in September was Gwen Chapman, a small group facilitator for parents who have lost children at a small group during the Southwest Grief Coalition last fall. I was so pleased to see that Gwen had gone from what we experienced together in her living room a few years ago to her being able to say, let's take a turn at leading a group of other parents who have lost their kids. I can't imagine what it would be like to lose one of our boys. I can't imagine what kind of work God would have to do in my mind, in my heart, to heal me and to restore me, or to help me get back up on the horse. But here is Gwen with an imperfection, with a story, with something painful in her past. And she inspired me by becoming part of the Southwest Grief Coalition to say that there are ways that those of us who deal with these circumstances in our lives, we can actually rise up and be resilient and make our way back into the world, living out our faith to share and to bring hope and peace to others. In fact, Gwen is going to join me next Wednesday night to share a little bit more of her story when we have a session here on a Wednesday night on people who are created to be and how they're discovering new ways to be. Gwen will be here. But I love the Japanese art of kintsugi. Kintsugi, thank you, Pastor Matthew. This is the art of a broken vessel, starting about in the 1500, about 500 years ago or so. Japanese artists would reconstruct these pots, place new enamel between these broken pots that have broken accidentally, but pots still have a function if you just can enamel them back together and reconstruct their shape again. And as the art form began to develop, it became a celebration of resiliency, when there would be a intertwining inside the lacquer with gold powder that can fill in the cracks and make these vessels whole again and functioning again. Kintsugi is a Japanese art, but for us as Christians, it's the faith that God can help us over time pick up the pieces, to find a way to recognize our imperfections, or the things that we have and create things all new again. So I think we need to allow ourselves to be who we are and let God be who God is, and live out our faith with purpose. But I also think there's also an element of allowing others to be who they are too. To allow others is part of this whole process. My son Liam is a 19-year-old. He's a first-year student at Gustavus. And Michelle and I have already started talking to him about our current day and age and how this is the first election that he's going to be able to vote in next fall. And we say, Liam, this is really going to be an interesting year in 2024. We have all kinds of divisiveness on public display. We have kinds of unconstructive ways of relating to one another, of firing over bows, talking directly about circumstances. And it really is a challenging time, a challenging place that we will go through here in faith together, friends, here at St. Andrew. To continue to love God and to love people. And when I talk about allowing others to be who they are too, it's the same as seeing others the way Jesus sees us. Is that kind of demanding or hard to hear? How do we see others the way Jesus sees us? How do we forgive others if we have been forgiving? Or the golden rule, love others as you have first been loved. Seeing others the way Jesus sees us. Jesus sees beauty, Jesus sees potential, Jesus sees purpose. How do we do that? Can we do that in a new way? This is an image of an iceberg. I talked about this a bit on Wednesday evening. When we were talking about getting to know people and understanding people. We know the image of an iceberg. We can see on the surface what an iceberg looks like. But when we look under the surface, we have no idea what's underneath the surface. So there are things that are evident, things that are hidden. There are things that we can see subjectively, but then there are things underneath the surface that we have no idea. Part of the intercultural development inventory, the study that is done for people, is to invite us to think about other people around us like an iceberg. How there are things that we can know about someone, and then how there are things underneath the surface of the water about someone that there's no way we could possibly know what informs their beliefs, what is part of their system, what is part of their baggage that they carry, part of the things that they are carrying, those imperfections that are underneath the surface. There's no way in the world that we could know all of those things about a person. And the IDI, the Intercultural Development Inventory, invites us to be honest about that. That a way to see people is like an iceberg, that we can see what we see there, but then don't judge lest we be judged, is maybe a way of Jesus saying it. We're trying to see in people the image and the child of God that they really are, in the midst of trying to put the grace and the love of Jesus forward with every step that we take. Another example of that here is this lovely artwork that I received a couple of years ago from my niece named Olive. So she's great. I never thought that at my age I would have a now 7-year-old niece. But just a couple of years ago, it was 5 when she gave me this, Uncle Peter, and then Love Olive. And I don't know where they were, but clearly hammerheads were big that day. Now let me do a little exercise with you about this lovely little picture from Olive. There are 2 ways to look at this picture. You could say that she didn't stay in the lines. You could say that she's got a strange choice of color. Orange fins and a purple whale body. You could say her penmanship is not very good. You could say that she should have put the heart on the other side of the page because we read from left to right. We could say these things. We could feel these things about something. Jesus could very easily, when it comes to people around him, dismiss them. They're Pharisees. This is a woman of the city. But is that what Jesus does? This is Olive's gift to me, and it's beautiful. Okay. Jesus charts a new course of love, of forgiveness. It includes all the people who we expect, maybe that are in our families or around this room, the ordinary. But man, does Jesus cast the net. Everybody's created to be blessed in their imperfections. And somehow, some way, Jesus makes a way of bringing about community and wholeness and healing and purposefulness. I have to believe that. Jesus believed that. There's hope in the world. And we're part of that. So even within the imperfections, we're blessed as children of God. Thanks be to God. Amen.